Okay.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, everyone. We're going to continue with our studying about Beruria. Um, I really must say I'm really very excited about the idea that we're spending so much time with one character, because and she's not a biblical character, but there's just she's so rich in terms of stuff, and it's a chance for me to go into texts which I sort of know, but never really you know them, but you don't really analyze them. So it's it's kind of fun to do that. And so let me share the screen where we left off last time. Share screen. Okay, and I even put it in yellow so I wouldn't forget. So um, so we actually we had been here's where I wrote stop here, start with yellow. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go back to. So in in the I started talking about the Tosefta last week. With the Tosefta is not quite the Mishnah, but it's pretty much parallel to the Mishnah. It's its own corpus, and very often has things that are in the Mishnah, but very often things that are not in the Mishnah. And Baba Kama is in the Talmud, so it's like the Mishnah. You can understand it as being the Mishnah on the Talmud, but except that it's Tosefta on the Talmud, and it's something that a lot of people are talking about now. And one of the great scholars of the Tosefta is Judith Hauptman. I know that she's been part of your women's league over the years, and she's one of the great scholars of the Tosefta. And not too long ago, actually, there was a whole in Hebrew there was a whole week that I was studying different Toseftot in what I go to every. Some people pray every morning. I, at 9 o'clock every morning, go to Beit Avichai. That's my Shacharit service. So there was somebody talking about the Tosefta there. So this is in the Tosefta, and I think we started looking at this, right? We started looking at this, and we saw that Beruria, who is Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion's daughter, when they talked about an oven, how can it be purified? That one rabbi says when they move it from its place, right? And Beruria says when they disassemble its parts. And when the rabbis heard this, or one rabbi in particular, he said that his daughter said it better than his son. Okay, so in other words, if you're comparing that, by the way, is a put down for the son. In a patriarchal situation, if you tell where the sons are supposed to be the studiers, the study of the carrying on the tradition, to say that the daughter said it better than the son, that's sort of a little bit of an insult in a sense. You could see it that way, or you could see it as praise, right? You could see it in both ways. And then again, in another Tosefta, and Kelim Bava Matzia, in another part, it says regarding a door bolt, Rabbi Tarfon declares it impure, but the rabbis declare it pure. And Beruria says one removes it from the store and hangs it on another on the Shabbat, right? And when these comments were brought before Rabbi Yehuda or Joshua, he said Beruria said it well. So what we're looking at are two compliments by rabbis of Beruria, okay? Which shows us what about Beruria? What do we learn about Beruria from this?
I think we learned two things. One, that she gave opinions, and two, that the rabbis respected it.
Okay, and what else can we say about the nature of, if we want to look at the nature of her suggestions? One is they disassemble its parts, right? And the other is that you remove it. What the rabbis say that it's impure, or have arguments about it's being pure, right? Is it impure or is it pure? She says, right, you take it from this door and hang it on another wall on this Shabbat. So what could we say about the nature of these two these two suggestions, or are they even, do they become halacha? We don't even know. Do they become halacha? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what can we say about it? But what do they have in common? I mean, maybe I'm reading something into it that's not there. Okay, so I'll tell you what I think. All right, if we're talking about purity, and what's the best way to purify something? Well, if you disassemble it, moving it from one place to another, but doesn't necessarily make it pure. But if you take all of its parts, and then have to put them back together again, hopefully you'll do it correctly, right? It's practical. It's a practical suggestion. It's getting to the point if you talk about purity and impurity, right? Whether they accept it or not, we don't know. But that's, and the other one is, instead of arguing whether it's pure or not, she simply says, okay, just, in fact, she almost seems to be contradicting herself, right? Vis-a-vis the first one. Because here she's saying, well, you remove it and hang it on another. Isn't that similar to what the other rabbis were saying? Wait, somebody said something, but I didn't hear what you said. Okay, if somebody said something, I don't know what you said. So, okay. So, by the way, I think it was Emerson and not Thoreau, one of them, said consistency is the hobgoblin of something minds. Of consistency is the hobgoblin of, anyone remember the quotation?
Little minds or something.
Little minds, I think, right? Something minds. So what Beruria is sort of showing is she doesn't think it's so important to be consistent, right? Here it was okay if they moved it from one place to another, but she said, no, it's better if you take apart the parts. And here he's saying, just remove it and hang it on another, right? So both of them are practical suggestion, but she's not necessarily being consistent. So I think keeping. Is it Emerson or Thoreau? Does anyone remember? I think it's Emerson.
Hang on, I just looked at. Yes, it is Emerson.
Yeah, and what's the exact quotation?
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I forgot about the fool's consistency. Okay. I always say a consistency. I always forget about a fool. Okay, so if we look at the passage above here, so not only could she learn more halachic traditions than anyone and in less time, she also had her own ideas, her own independent rulings. She wasn't afraid to disagree with other scholars. As Sue said earlier, she did not hesitate to speak up, and she often won the argument with them, all right? They honored her. They saw that she was intellectually superior, at least in the case with her brother. And also, I would add that she didn't think the consistency was so important. In other words, you don't have to have a party line, which, by the way, I think today is something very, very important. Everyone thinks you have, we criticize people who are not consistent. But I think that, I really agree with Emerson. I think that consistency is overrated. I think you have to be adaptable to all sorts of different changes, and you don't have to necessarily always stick to the party line. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? You don't have to agree with. I'm not Beruria. You don't have to agree with me.
No, it shows because different situations. Each situation is not the same as the next one. So you have to be flexible. Certainly, women are flexible because you're doing different things at different times. So anyway, but it depends on, we have no concept of what they mean by bolt on a door.
Right, exactly. Is the door bolt the thing that's going to stop the thieves from coming into your house or the wind from coming into your house? Or what does it mean? Does it mean if you're talking about Tchum Shel Shabbat, what's Tchum Shel Shabbat? Like you have to have an Eruv around an area, and within that area, Geraldine, do you know what an Eruv is? Have you studied what an Eruv is? An Eruv would be a place that allows you to carry from one place to another.
Oh, okay.
And most cities, like even New York City, supposedly has a kosher Eruv. Somebody checks it every single, Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, to make sure, because otherwise people could not take baby carriages out. They couldn't carry from one place to another. So this is called an Eruv. Okay, and so maybe that's the connection there. You're right, Marcia. We don't know. We don't know what it is. Okay. So let me see. Did we look at this last time? Yes, we did. Okay. So last week we looked at the sinners, right? We discussed that, and the fact that she argued with her husband about, sinning, and we talked about that. I said I was going to start with yellow or Noam. So last week what we did is we looked at that, all right? Her differentiating between a sinner and sins, right? And she basically she chastised her husband, Rabbi Meir, by telling him that you should make sure, that pray that their sins stop and not to want the sinners to die. Okay. So now I said that I wanted to continue with the yellow in.
No, I'm seeing.
Did somebody want to add something now? No, okay. Here we go. Okay. So let me go out of the sharing. Fortunately, which is really very nice of them, they showed me up the right place. Wait, I have to stop the sharing. And now we go into hello, Marcia, and hello, Louise. Now we go into another share, which is Noam Sion's book. Okay, so that's what I said I would do last week. Start with this. Okay, see, I have it all arranged. All right.
Okay.
Sue, would you like to start reading? I could take out the start with this right now.
Sure. This is the Talmudic context of Beruria's witty rebukes. While Beruria's audacity appears at first glance to be totally idiosyncratic, actually her style of rebuke is part and parcel of a Talmudic tradition which the rabbis appreciated. These tales of Beruria are placed in the Talmud among a series of anecdotes about wisdom for travelers, where verbal acuity and paradoxical statements are praised. By analogy, Beruria's wit, too, is implicitly applauded, even when the criticism comes from outsiders like Beruria, who shame rabbis who are supposed to be knowledgeable insiders.
Okay, now, she now says here, and I thought this would be very interesting, we're going off a little topic, but he now brings, you could say, if you wish to follow the detailed discussion, right, we could skip to that, or we could read a little bit about what Tova Hartman and Charlie Buchholz had to say about something which leads into the tales of Beruria. Okay, so go on.
Okay, with great insight, Tova Hartman and Charlie Buchholz illuminate this anecdote that leads into the tales of Beruria. They show how it celebrates the ability to learn from those who are social outsiders, like Beruria, excluded from male rabbinic society. Rabbi Joshua ben Hanania said, "In all my days, no one ever bettered me in a verbal exchange except for a woman, a little boy, and a little girl." The woman whom Rabbi Joshua acknowledges as his superior in debate is, like Beruria, someone who catches a rabbi engaged in hypocritical behavior that violates his own rabbinic norms. She too cites a rabbinic practice to bring her point home. Once I was hosted by a female innkeeper. She made me beans. On the first day, I ate nothing left over. On the second day, too, I left over nothing. On the third day, she cooked the beans with too much salt. As soon as I tasted them, I withdrew my hand from them and left it all on my plate. She said to me, Rabbi, why aren't you dining? I told her, I already dined earlier today. Thus I sought to avoid shaming her by complaining about her cooking. She replied, but if that were true, in that case, you would have withdrawn your hand from the bread, but you ate the bread while avoiding my beans. She continued, perhaps this is divine punishment for not having left payah, not for having set aside leftovers from your dinner for the poor in your previous meals. After all, don't the rabbis say the waiter does not have to leave over payah in the serving pot, but the guest does leave the payah on one's plate?
Wow.
Okay, so isn't that this? I don't know if you know this story. It's a very well-known story. I don't know if you know it, but it's very, very interesting. This has nothing to do with Beruria, but it's a woman's wisdom, right? It's a woman's wisdom who's putting to shame a rabbi, and I think it's very interesting. They're going to explain it, of course, and we'll read what they have to say. But I think it's very. What are your thoughts about it before you read the explanation?
What was the question?
Well, I mean, it was obvious why. It was obvious to me why he didn't eat the third portion, and she knew what she was doing. She was teaching him a lesson, which he should have been taught by his teachers. That when you visit somebody, it's polite or good manners or tradition to leave something on the plate.
Okay, but by the way, in some societies, if you leave something on the plate, what?
They're insulted.
Oh, in some societies, if you leave on the plate, it's a good thing. In other societies, you don't leave anything on the society. So you have to know a lot more than your own tradition.
Exactly.
When you go traveling.
Exactly. So it's basically she's teaching. She's like in rabbinical school, right? This is what you call practical rabbinics, right?
Yes.
Which very often rabbis don't get. Incidentally, one of the things that my husband was known for is that he had interns here. It was very unusual in Israel. His interns from the rabbinical school. He had a program, and for years we'd have the interns here. They got a little bit of money. They got a stipend, and they got practical rabbinics, something which they were not getting in rabbinical school. And almost every rabbi in Israel, including Sue, is your rabbi? What's her name? Natalie?
Yeah, he went back to the States, but Ranan Malik. Yeah.
Okay, and so including Natalie, almost every rabbi in Israel who's worth their beans came through our program, right? Conservative rabbi. So practical rabbinics are really, really important, right? And so this is really important. So now let's see what they have to say. Let's go on. You want to continue reading? 1 second. Okay.
Sure. From a ritual point of view, the innkeeper rebukes the rabbi for failing to leave leftovers on his plate from the previous 2 meals. She keeps him from repeating that sin a third time by oversalting his meal and making it inedible, so he will leave all of it over. This innkeeper, a role usually filled by uneducated women, proves to be a master of rabbinic practice. She knows how to quote halachot back to the rabbis themselves and expose their hypocrisy. She also knows how to intuit this rabbi's thinking process, even though he is dissembling, apparently to protect her feelings. From an ethical point of view, her rebuke can be understood in 2 ways. One, according to the Baalei Tosafot, and another according to Rashi. The Tosafot suggests that finishing all the food on one's plate without leaving leftovers characterizes a gluttonous eater, lacking the control of his desires and deficient in the cultural refinement expected from the rabbinic class.
Wow.
Bless you.
Thus, the innkeeper intentionally ruins and the beans on the third day.
You want someone else to continue reading?
Yes, please.
Like, Joyce, you want to continue reading? I don't want to hear you. So,
Okay, thus the innkeeper intentionally ruins the beans on the third day to prevent the ravenous rabbi from overindulging again. This innkeeper, who is attentive to people's eating patterns, teaches the rabbi to be more careful in refining his character, lest he shame his own rabbinic caste. She teaches him indirectly by speaking about the laws of Payah in order to let the rabbi save face by honoring his learning and engaging him in his field of expertise.
Okay, so I think it's very interesting, before we continue, I think it's very interesting that it's Dafka, a woman, who is doing this, and an innkeeper, right? By the way, I don't have the Hebrew in front of me. I could probably look it up and see what the word is for innkeeper, because in the book of Joshua,
right?
What?
I once made a
Zonah,
mistake about that. Yeah. Go on. I'm sorry.
Right. So in the book of Joshua, although the word is understood that she's a prostitute, but there are people who say it's quite possible that she was also an innkeeper, because the word also zonah has the same root as zan, which is to feed. Like we say birkat hamazon, right? Mazon is food. So in other words, so she's the one who gives food to other people. So we could check the word, but I don't think it matters. I think the lesson is clear. Whatever she is, the point is, in society, this is a woman who is able to feed men, right, and gets to know them, right. He may even stay in her house for all we know. So it's very interesting that they have a female and B, an innkeeper. All right, let's go on. Unless somebody wants to say.
Wait, but she was wasting food.
Very good. So what could you do? By the way, if you in your house, if you oversalt something, what would you do?
Add more beans.
I probably would eat it, because
add more beans. Add more beans.
You add more water, more beans.
or douse it in water. Yeah.
Or put more water over. I mean, you would throw it out, right?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Even a dog wouldn't eat it, right?
Right. I
All
actually.
right, I'll read. From an ethical point of view, her rebuke can be understood in two ways. One, according to the Balei Tosafot, and another according to Rashi.
Okay, we haven't gotten to Rashi yet. Wait, I think, did you reading this? No, I haven't moved yet. No, now we're going to see what Rashi has to say.
Okay.
Right? Just read with the Tosafos. By the way, the Tosafists were Tosafists were people who lived in France and Germany in the 12th and 13th century, and they were fairly liberal in terms of. I use them a lot in my book on wife beating. They were fairly liberal when it came to punishing wife beaters. So to me, they're like the heroes, unlike other places. So they're a group. The Tosafists lived in what's sort of Ashkenaz, French, France and Germany, that area. Rabbi Meir, not this rabbi, but Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg was an example of a Baal Tosafot, or Rabbi Peretz, who wrote there are a lot of them. Rabbi Simcha of Shfire. There are a whole bunch of Tosafists who. Okay, so anyway, it doesn't matter. 12 and 13. Now let's look and see what Rashi has to say.
But by the way, it does really comment on an innkeeper who's very knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rashi, by contrast, interprets the innkeeper's rebuke as a critique of this rabbi's lack of moral sensitivity to the innkeeper's servant. When the servant pours out the beans from the cooking utensil, ilfas, onto the guest's plate, it is not polite to leave over any for himself in the pot. Rather, each person is expected to leave over a payah for the poor servant on his own plate, and then to return it to the server at the end of the meal. In short, this rabbi is not only uncultured in his table manners, but selfish, insensitive, and immoral in his disregard of the servant's needs. Only when the food is inedible does he leave leftovers. The innkeeper does not shame Rabbi Joshua directly, but conjectures, giving him the benefit of the doubt that he has left over all the food on his plate this third time for the enjoyment of the server to compensate his having forgotten to do so before. Or perhaps he had mistakenly thought that food had already been left over in the pot for the servant. In fact, the innkeeper forces the rabbi to show some restraint in finishing what should have been left for the poor. In rebuking this rabbi for failing to live up to rabbinic standards, the innkeeper employs her wit, her tact, and her learning to teach him greater moral sensitivity.
Okay. So what we have here then is we have, let me just stop the share for a second. What we have here then is what's really very interesting. We have a story of, with the 2 points of view, who is rebuking the rabbi more, the Tosafists or Rashi, by the way?
I think the Tosafist is.
The Tosafist.
I was going to say Rashi.
Two against one here.
I think Rashi is more rebuking of him.
Yeah.
But both of them make it clear, you know. I think the Tosafists are giving him a benefit of a doubt. You know, what you did is wrong, but they're, you know, whereas Rashi, you know, takes him to town, you know, like, so I think, and it's very, very interesting. And none of them seem to be commenting on the fact that it's a woman who rebukes them, right?
The innkeeper.
I mean, there was an article years ago I met, Chaim Soloveitchik talked about custom, and people in the kitchen, I don't know, there was an example about a fish fitting in a pot and you didn't put the whole fish in, and everybody said, oh, you know, they gave a whole drush on why, but he said they went and asked the woman, it could have been an innkeeper or a cook or just a housewife, and she said, well, the pot was too small for the whole fish. It was practical. People who the innkeeper was a practical person.
And it's giving us a little bit of insight also into Beruria, because there's something very similar, you know, about that. So we're going to have another story here. Louise, do you want to read that one? Let's go to this one. In the next anecdote, you have to unmute. Oh wait, I'm not sharing?
No, you're not sharing.
It's not sharing. In the meantime, I put the Hebrew into the chat. It actually doesn't use a word for her. פעם אחת התארחתי אצל אכסניה אחת, Astali. It doesn't give a noun for her.
Wow.
Okay.
It doesn't call her anything.
So it doesn't even. Okay, it doesn't even.
It doesn't say Balat Aksanya or something.
No.
Well, maybe Aksanya Achat.
Oh, that could be from with the aleph at the end. It could be a like.
Did you look it up in Sparia? You could check the English.
That's where I took it from.
Yeah, but
Aksanya could be the person or the place.
Right.
Could be.
Because then it says Astali, Poland, right? Okay. So they're being very careful to use the word Aksanya. And you could check. You could check it, by the way.
Yeah.
In Svaria to look at the English as well to see how
Well,
they
I am looking
to see exactly what translate the Achsan Yachad. Okay. Anyway, that's interesting. If it had been another word, that would have been fascinating.
yeah, but it's not.
Truly fascinating. Okay, so let's go on to. I have to share screen with you, right?
Yeah. Right.
Share screen. Okay. In the next anecdote, okay.
Okay. In the next anecdote in the same sugya, the moral passion displayed by the female innkeeper moves another woman, a young girl, to upbraid Rabbi Joshua. She rebukes him for being an insensitive, exploitive rabbi who takes what does not belong to him. Her language is cunning and yet brutal, treating a minor offense as the equivalent of a violent robbery. Thus she succeeds in teaching a lesson which the rabbi will never forget. To his credit, Rabbi Joshua does not resent her disrespectful tone, and he does not suppress the memory of his exposure to ridicule. Rather, he reports his learning experience in the first person. He tells his students how he was put to shame by a woman's rebuke.
Okay, and now we have it, okay?
Once I was walking on the way, and I encountered a road crossing through a field. I began walking on it. A young girl said to me, "Rabbi, isn't this a privately owned field?" I replied, "But isn't this road already well trodden?" Kavush, which means literally conquered. This old path has already become, in effect, a public thoroughfare by virtue of its regular use by the community. She retorted, "It became a public path only at the expense of the owner of the field, because robbers like you conquered it."
Okay, so wait, let's before we discuss this, what do you think about this one?
I think that
It's the same principle. I mean, she's more learned than he, and she's putting him in his place, basically.
Well, we don't know if she's more learned than him, but
she's being snippy, I think.
Okay, she's being snippy.
Right.
But if it really is a place
right,
that
it's a right of way issue.
Right, it might be a right of way, right? Okay, but by continuing to cross it, he's like compounding, compounding the original sin, if you want,
Right.
It's like.
But how would he know it was compounding a sin if it was so obviously a roadway?
Or no sign.
Or no sign, right?
No sign.
I mean,
that's still a problem, especially in Scotland or Ireland. People are crossing over other people's right of way.
I mean, agricultural fields are, not commonly have a sign anyway, but yet there are somewhat pathways where you can walk.
Okay, look, I'll give you an example. In our local pool, very often there is, some obstruction on the actual path.
Right.
So I go through the grass, and since I'm taking, something with wheels, I'm basically going on grass with wheels, sort of ruining the, the grass. Right. Now there was an instance where actually since so many other people did it, not only me, apparently, they actually decided to pave that and made that shortcut that I took into an actual path, and they paved it, right? But the point is, by doing something, you're really ruining the grass. You're ruining, whatever. So she's basically, I don't know, a communist. I don't know, she's not a communist, but that's the opposite of a communist, right? She's basically pointing out to him that, look, people like you, right? People like you are responsible for ruining, somebody else's privately owned land. Okay. All right. let's go on. Okay, the girls.
The girl's verbal riposte plays on the root of the word kavush, which means well-trodden, and which becomes the origin of the modern Hebrew for a major paved road, kavish.
Okay, so that's really very interesting because
Who would have thought?
lichvosh means to conquer, right?
Right.
And I know those of us who speak Hebrew, did you ever think of
A
kvish
road
as being, which is a road, as being connected to
conquered.
bush?
No, no,
No.
no.
No,
Yeah.
never, never. And those of
Right.
us who don't know Hebrew, you're learning something new together with us. Okay?
Yeah.
Amazing. Go on.
But she describes those who trotted as conquerors, like the Roman imperialists who paved roads throughout the robber empire. They conquer land by force for their benefit, just as the biblical Joshua, Rabbi Joshua's namesake, did. In his own defense, the rabbi assumes that the public has already acquired the right to use this path through the field, and he is simply following in their footsteps without bearing responsibility for their initial act of expropriation. But she disputes Rabbi Joshua and insists that the so-called customary right of usage all started when people, like
Like
you,
you.
once took that field by force without permission and turned it into their thoroughfare.
Okay, so she is really raising up something amazing here. And by the way, notice this little, political thing
Right.
insert here, right?
Right.
Which is not in the original, but he's putting it in here. In other words, that we were as bad as the Romans, right?
Right.
It's funny because my son Svika is teaching the book of Joshua to his congregation on Wednesday night at 10 o'clock my time, which is 12 o'clock California time. And I very often go into it, and listen to it. And sometimes I listen to it and fall asleep. But but anyway, I try when he's teaching. I try to go in. I say hello. I was
That's
there,
very nice. Yes.
and I met some of the people there. So I like to go in and listen to his lectures. Anyway, and someone actually raised the question about Joshua, and a naive question. How did the people go into the land, all of the 12 tribes, when they were given their plot?
Allotments.
And it was very interesting the way he finessed it, but he was also honest. He said, and sometimes they conquered it. Sometimes they went in and the people were happy to welcome them. But this is a very political comment that Noam Sion was making here. Okay. So I love reading people's, okay, but that's a side thing. Let's go on.
The girl initially treated the rabbi with respect, calling him rabbi, and she sought to understand his rationale for his morally problematic behavior. But the rabbi fobbed her off with the paternalistic answer with no biblical or rabbinic proof text. The rabbi retorted, "That is what people do. They use this as a public path." But he made no effort to confront the moral ambiguity she raised. How can the practice of repeated illicit occupation, even if repeated endlessly, turn into a publicly recognized right? In response to his excuse and his denial of moral and legal responsibility, the girl derides him with verbal acumen. She insults him by grouping him with a band of commoners and equating them all with a band of robbers.
Okay, so this is very interesting. This reminds me of something. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts about this. I know she's using the word occupation. I actually was not thinking of Israel, but you could think of it, right? I wasn't thinking of Israel, but now that I see the word occupation,
might think about her.
Yeah.
Okay.
One might think about
it.
it.
In red.
I just put it in red.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Yeah. No, I put it in red because when I was reading it, I didn't pay attention to it. But now, asking you questions about it, but let's go back to the public path, or I don't know. can you think some other examples? Not political things, but things that something that's done over and over again that become.
Well, in the United States, the conflict between the cowboys and the farmers over water rights and even grazing rights, and there were fights all the time. But in some places, if it's a path and you see that there's some kind of a path, it becomes accepted by usage.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you used the word usage because usage, I'm going to put this in here. Usage is equivalent to what in law?
There's a special term for it.
Yeah.
In rabbinic law, even.
Well, it can imply, the term applies more to people, I think, than land. But
okay, what I want to talk about is the idea of minhag. Okay.
Custom.
Custom. Yeah. All right. Usage and custom is very similar, right?
Yes.
So, in other words, people do things on a regular basis, and then it seems to be okay. Right? So I think that if he wanted to argue that way, he could have possibly used a rabbinic answer to that, right? But he makes no effort to do that. He basically sloughs off his responsibility. He could have said, well, you know that very often we have situations where something starts out among the people and it becomes such a practice that we now turn it into law. And there are examples of that, right? There are examples of that.
Yes.
For instance, so many of the laws of Passover, right?
Right.
Like eating kidney oats. Kidney oat would be, beans, and legumes, right? Legumes. And so certain things, by the way, potatoes, which are the mainstay of food on Passover, when potatoes first came to Europe, they were new. They didn't know what it was. They thought it was food for animals. And at the beginning, it was declared not kosher for Passover. Could you imagine if that had remained the same?
It would have starved, yeah.
It would starve on Passover, exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, I'm just doing that as something where minhag becomes almost law, all right? Quasi-law. Of course, if you decide not to use peanuts and whatever legumes on Passover, you're not going against the law. But if you're Ashkenazi, but some people would regard that as going against the law, okay? So let me take this out here, but I think that's an interesting comment. Okay, go on. Somebody else want to read? Marcia, you want to read Rabbi Joshua?
Oh, Rabbi Joshua is left speechless before both the innkeeper and the girl in the field, but he has learned something. He retells these tales of his own defeat in order to teach his students that one can learn from those who appear at first glance to be cultural, ethical, intellectual, age, and gender inferiors. Don't leave anything out. Incidentally, Rabbi Joshua, who learns much from his extended conversation with the female innkeeper and the girl in the field, shows no compunctions about conducting a lengthy conversation with these wise, audacious, and morally passionate females.
Okay. And by the way, should he be talking with females? Remember when?
Right.
Okay. Where's Beruria here? Okay. Yeah. So again, this is the same Rabbi Joshua. Okay.
Should I go on?
Yeah.
This is the same Rabbi Joshua from the tale of the oven of Achnai, who out-argued God with a radical reinterpretation of a verse from God's own Torah. It is not in heaven. That's Deuteronomy. There God too conceded respectfully to Rabbi Joshua, who bested God in verbal combat. About Rabbi Joshua's winning argument, God says, "My children have bested me in the argument. My children have defeated me." Elijah confirms that God smiled at the way his own words were cleverly used against him. Rabbi Joshua confesses humbly without resentment.
No. Here too. Wait, you skipped something. Here too.
Oh, here too, in our story about verbally talented women and children, Rabbi Joshua confesses humbly without resentment that as good as he is as a rabbinic interlocutor, he was bested by an uneducated woman and two children who were not even pupils in the house of study.
Okay, so I think this is really very interesting, and so
Wow.
we have here really something which gives us a little bit of insight into Beruria. Okay, so let's go back to Beruria. Does anyone want to comment before we go back to Beruria? But I think it's really because we're usually used to women not at all being part of Talmudic discourse, right? And yet when they do show up, right? Even though they'll say women are fools, or anyone who listens to a woman is a fool, and there are all sorts of things like that, or you shouldn't teach women fools, and shouldn't teach women Torah, and if you do, you're teaching tiflut, which we're not sure exactly what the word tiflut means, but foolishness or even things of no worth or whatever. And yet we have these very interesting respect for, starting with unlearned women, right, who come in, maids, wives, right? The famous story of a wife who, I'm sure you've all heard this, a wife of a man, every time, of one of the rabbis, every time he's dying, but every time he opens his mouth, he curses and somebody else dies. So finally, to let the guy finally die, she knocks down something in her house and it bangs. And then, the rabbis in the background are all praying for him, right? They're all praying for him. And so the praying is keeping him alive, right?
Yeah.
And so finally, she knocks something down and whatever, and they all stop praying for a minute. And in that second, he's able to die because of her, she sent him to Switzerland, right, to kill him off, right? Euthanasia. By the way, very often that story is used in discussions about euthanasia. I don't know if you've heard this story, but if you haven't, we could look for it at another time. It's a very well-known story. Okay, so let's go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, we did the start with yellow in Noam Sion. And let's continue to one more. We have time for that. Yeah, no, we don't really have time for that. But let's get one thing here. We never got around to ethical wills, but we don't have to today. So apparently, Beruria was a member of the aristocracy from rabbinic point of view. All right, and her whole family were martyrs under Roman persecution, and her mother also was a strong character. And they were a family of who knew their Torah. They were eloquent. They were known to condemn sinners, right? And the whole family adopted a very severe stance toward Beruria's brothers. You remember the idea who said, "My daughter is smarter than not my daughter, but the daughter is smarter than the brother."
Yeah.
Maybe this is a reference to that brother because he performed crimes, and he was apparently brutally murdered by bandits. Okay, and in a midrash that appears in the Lamentations Rabbah, you have commentary on some of the phrases, and you also have commentary on some of the phrases from Proverbs. We could start with this again next week, but let's just look at it because I'd like to have something that's about Beruria this time. And so he's made to, right? He's broken my teeth with gravel stones. He has made me to wallow in ashes, right? It's related to the son of Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion, that's Beruria's brother, that he became friends with robbers whose secret he disclosed, right? In other words, he was what's the word? What's the word? Not a leech, what's the word? Not a spy,
A mole? Is that what you're looking
Betrayal,
for? Or a stool pigeon?
yeah.
Betrayal, right? He betrayed his friends, right? There's a word for that. I just can't think.
Undercover.
Informer. He was an informer.
Like an informer, right? But what's the casual word for an informer?
Informer.
A twitch.
A snitch.
Snitch.
A
snitch. Yeah.
A snitch whose secret he disclosed. So they killed him, and right, if you snitch, you're going to be killed. They filled his mouth with dust and pebbles. After 3 days, the rabbis placed him in a coffin and wished to recite a eulogy over him out of respect for his father. But Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion would not permit them to do so. He said to them, "Allow me, and I will speak concerning to my son." He opened his discourse and said, "I did not pay heed to the voice of my teachers, nor incline my ear to my instructions. I was in dire trouble in the midst of the assembly." A quote from Proverbs. All right. The mother recited over him, "A foolish son is the vexation to his father and bitterness to her that bore him." Basically, she is, both of them are sort of disowning him, right? The father by saying, he didn't pay heed to my teachers, meaning him, right? And because of that, he was in trouble. And the mother is even worse, what she says, right? I wish, she doesn't quite say, I wish he hadn't born him, but to a certain degree, yes. His sister, presumably Beruria, or perhaps there's a legendary sister, we'll come to her in one of these days, recited over him, "Bread gained by fraud is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth shall be filled with gravel." What is she saying here?
Well, in the moment, he thinks it's okay, but then afterwards, he's...
In the long run, it's
long run, yeah.
It's
long
not
run,
nourishment.
It turns to gravel.
The question is it one-upsmanship on her part? Is she saying something else? Is she being kinder to him? It's not really clear. So anyway, Judith Abrams, who comments on the role of learned women, right, in this tragic story, writes, Hanania display their knowledge and condemn their kin, right? He has not lived up to the family standard of morality and scholarship. She says about Beruria, an aspect of self-proclaimed pride, for she not only adds her own voice to those of her parents at the funeral, but also shows off in competition with her parents' eulogies. She finds a verse even more appropriate for the specific circumstances of her brother's act. In other words, what's her one-upsmanship? She not only condemns him for the crime, but she finds a passage, right? Let's go back to the passage. She finds a passage from Proverbs that says, after his mouth shall be filled with gravel, okay? In other words, she is more to the point than they are, okay? Beruria shows no sympathy. You can see that Judith Abrams is very critical here. Beruria shows no sympathy for weakness, neither for her brother nor for fellow students of Torah, as we shall see in the following anecdotes. even though she champions a compassionate approach to Rabbi Meir's hooligans. That's an interesting point. How come she was able to be compassionate to Rabbi Meir's hooligans, but not to her own brother? Interesting point. And on this, I'll leave you. All right?
Oh, you're leaving us hanging. We don't know what their relationship was before.
Well, right, we don't know. Okay, but anyway, okay, I'll read one more thing. Some modern feminists explain Beruria aggressive. I don't know where I'm taking this from, by the way. I don't think it's Judith Abrams. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's coming from Sion. I don't know. Some modern feminists explain Beruria's expressive style of argument as a form of psychological compensation for isolation as a woman in an unwelcome masculine world. She makes herself emotionally tough, tougher than any male rabbi, in order to prove her virility. Since women are denigrated as weak-minded, she has to prove her strength in a hostile male environment. Okay. So next week we'll continue from here. Let me just insert something. I remember to do that. Insert text. Start from here. I may not start from here, but at least I know where I ended off. Start from here. Okay.
You got to highlight it in yellow.
Okay. Or how about yellow and yellow? I can't do the yellow from there, but I could do yellow from here. Okay. You already have my number, don't you?
Yeah. Sure. It's really interesting that if Beruria was a male saying this, would they be as critical?
Yeah,
of
they
her?
seem to be exceptionally jealous.
Even the feminists.
Of Beruria.
I'm just saying.
They are really jealous.
Question.
She wouldn't have worn pink.
Okay. Notice I'm wearing red. You're wearing red. Louise.
I'm wearing orange. I'm wishy-washy, right?
And we have two pink people here. Yeah. So I bought this, by the way, when I was in the States. It's very bright. It's really bright, and it was on sale for Christmas.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
I'm so tempted to wear it with something bright green, which I also bought. I couldn't bring myself to do that, but it actually, because I bought it in America, during the winter, it's very heavy. So I decided I'm making up my mind what I'm taking to.
When are you moving?
Yeah, so wait, I'll stop it. Although it's not a secret, I already sent out a blog, but I'll stop.
Okay.
So first of all, I'll see you all next week. Let me just stop the recording, and now we could continue.